what it was really like to live in Victorian London's East End. The year is 1850. You are standing at the edge of the most powerful empire the world has ever seen. And you are starving. Not the kind of hunger you forget by lunchtime. The kind that wakes you at 3 a.m. with cramps so sharp they bend you double. The kind that makes you watch your child's ribs show through their shirt and count them like a warning. Welcome to the East End of London. 7 square miles of fog, filth, and forgotten people pressed up against the glittering wealth of the greatest city on earth. Nobody wrote songs about this place. Nobody painted portraits here. But if you want to understand what Victorian Britain really was, not the top hats and gas lamps and afternoon tea, you need to stand here, in the dark, in the mud, and breathe it in. Go on, breathe. You wake up in Whitechapel. The room is roughly 12 feet by 10. In it, your parents, your 3 siblings, a lodger named Thomas who smells of the tannery, and a bed that 4 of you share in shifts. You slept from midnight to 6. Thomas takes it from 6 to noon. The Flanagan family upstairs does the same. Same mattress, different hours, same straw stuffed inside, black with damp and older than anyone can remember. There is no window that opens properly. The walls sweat. The ceiling has a patch of mold so old it's grown its own geography. You do not complain. Complaining costs energy. Energy costs food. Food costs money. And money is everything here. This is the East End at the height of the British Empire. While Queen Victoria sits in Buckingham Palace, presiding over a quarter of the world's landmass, 500,000 people are packed into these eastern parishes of London: Whitechapel, Bethnal Green, Stepney, Limehouse, Poplar, at a density that would make modern city planners weep. It wasn't always this bad, but industrialization came fast, and it came without mercy. Factories needed workers. Workers needed housing. Landlords smelled money. And in the space of a few decades, the East End transformed from a rough but workable neighborhood into something closer to a pressure cooker with no release valve. By 1850, 1 privy, that's an outdoor toilet, a wooden box over a brick pit, serves up to 50 families. 1 water pump at the end of the street serves the entire block. And that pump, it draws from groundwater, contaminated by the same cesspits it stands 20 feet from. You drank from that pump this morning. You drank from it yesterday. You'll drink from it tomorrow, if you're still alive. Step outside. The smell hits you before anything else. Not a single smell. A weather system of smells. There is the Black Ditch, the open sewer that snakes through Spitalfields and empties into Limehouse Dock, so thick with human waste and industrial runoff that on warm days it stops resembling water entirely. There are the tanneries processing animal hides with urine and dog dung. There are the slaughterhouses, their drains running red into the gutters. There is the gasworks 2 streets over, poisoning the air with coal fumes so heavy you can taste them on your back teeth. And underneath it all, permanent and inescapable, the smell of people. Too many people. Living too close, too dirty, too poor to do anything about it. London's locals called it the smoke. Visitors called it unbearable. You call it Tuesday. The street itself is barely a street. Unpaved, potholed, slick with something that was mud last week and is something worse this week. Horse carts clatter past on stone, spraying filth onto anyone standing too close. Children dodge between wheels. A costermonger shouts the price of eels from his barrow. A woman argues from a first-floor window. Somewhere close, a baby won't stop crying. Somewhere closer, a man is already drunk at 7 in the morning because gin costs less than clean water, and it numbs things that need numbing. This is the noise of the East End. It never stops, not in the day, not at night, not in winter, not ever. You are 11 years old, and you need to work, not because your parents are cruel, because if you don't, the family falls short on rent by Wednesday, and Mr. Briggs, the collector, comes on Thursday, without sympathy and without patience. He has done this job for 20 years. He has heard every story. He evicts people without pausing his sentence. So you sweep. You hawk watercress from a basket, threading through morning crowds, calling the price until your voice cracks. If you are unlucky enough to live near Bow, your mother works nights at Bryant and May's match factory, dipping sticks into white phosphorus for 14 hours to earn enough for one loaf of bread. After a few years, the phosphorus eats into the jawbone. Workers call it phossy jaw. The jaw turns green. It glows in the dark. Then it rots. The factory knows. The factory continues. If you are a boy with small hands and no better option, you go up chimneys. Literally inside them, bare hands and bare feet on sooty brickwork, scraping your way up narrow flues in the dark. Falls, burns, suffocations, boys getting stuck and not coming back down. This is legal. This is normal. This is Tuesday again. In 1832, cholera arrived in the East End like a biblical event. It came from the water. Nobody knew that yet. Doctors believed disease traveled through bad air, miasma. The theory being that foul smells caused illness. So when people started vomiting to death by the thousands, the medical prescription was purge them further, restrict their fluids, bleed them, give them mercury pills that burned their throats raw. This treatment killed more people than it saved. The truth that cholera is a waterborne bacteria, treatable with nothing more complex than clean water and salts, would not be proven until Dr. John Snow mapped a Soho outbreak in 1854, traced every death to a single contaminated pump on Broad Street, and removed the handle. The dying stopped almost immediately. It took decades for the establishment to fully accept it. Between 1831 and 1866, approximately 40,000 people died of cholera in London. Thousands of them right here in these streets, buried fast, buried deep, in corners of churchyards that filled up so quickly that bodies were sometimes stacked 3 high before the lime went in. Tuberculosis, though, was the quiet constant, the slow bleed. It tore through overcrowded rooms with no ventilation, the way fire tears through dry timber. If cholera was the East End's dramatic horror, tuberculosis was its permanent hum, always there, always taking someone. By the 1880s, a new kind of fear settles over these streets. Jack. Nobody knows his name. Nobody sees his face. But between August and November 1888, the Whitechapel murders turned the East End into something the whole world is watching for the wrong reasons. Suddenly, journalists from across England descend on these streets, not to report on the poverty or the child labor or the cholera, but for the murders. And in their notebooks, almost by accident, they document everything else. A journalist named William Fishman walks through Whitechapel and writes of streets so narrow that neighbors can shake hands from opposite windows, of rooms where 8 people sleep on bare boards with one shared candle, of women who have not eaten in 2 days still feeding their children first. Poverty this severe doesn't just hurt, it organizes people. Because here's the thing about the East End that the history books miss if they're not careful. It is not just suffering, it is also something else, something harder to name. On Saturday nights, the street outside the pub is full of singing, not sad singing, loud, warm, ridiculous singing, arms around strangers' shoulders, neighbors who share nothing, share everything, a cup of sugar, a piece of coal, the knowledge of which factory is hiring tomorrow morning. When a family gets evicted, the street often quietly passes a collection. When a child is sick, 3 women appear with whatever they have. The East End is brutal, but it is also stubbornly, impossibly a community. The reforms come slowly, too slowly. Joseph Bazalgette's great sewer system, completed in 1875, finally takes the human waste underground and out to sea. Death rates fall almost immediately. The 1870 Education Act begins pulling children out of factories and into schoolrooms. The match girls at Bryant and May go on strike in 1888 and win. One of the first successful strikes by unskilled workers in British history. Things get better. Inch by inch, decade by decade. They get better. But by the time clean water runs reliably to East End homes, by the time children are no longer climbing chimneys for pennies, by the time the TB death rate finally drops, entire generations are already gone, already buried in those crowded churchyard corners, already dissolved into the mud of these narrow streets. It is evening now. You are walking back through Whitechapel. The gas lamps on the main road make gold circles in the fog. A piano pours out of a pub door. Somewhere a baby is crying, and somewhere a woman is laughing, and the two sounds tangle together in the damp air and drift up between the rooftops toward a sky you can't quite see through the smoke. Your boots are wet, your hands are raw, you are tired in a way that doesn't go away with sleep. You stop at the costermonger's cart and spend your last halfpenny on a piece of bread. You eat it, standing up, in the street, in the dark, in the fog, and it tastes like the most important thing in the world. Because it is. This is the East End, filthy and loud and heartbreaking and more alive than anywhere you've ever stood.